Right. Since receiving his PhD at Berkeley in 2001, Dr. Rob McFarland has been a professor here at BYU in the German and Russian department, specifically in German. He teaches a variety of classes for European studies and global women's studies, and is also faculty for international cinema studies. A notable accomplishment of Dr. McFarland's is his work on the Sophie Project, which is a digital library of works by German-speaking women, largely texts by women who have been forgotten. This is the largest women's collection in the world. His involvement in this project is ultimately what interested him in women's studies. Out of all his time spent teaching, his favorite experience was co-teaching GWS 222, Introduction to Global Women's Studies, with his wife, Mary Ann. Dr. McFarland also created my personal favorite class here at BYU, the Gendered Camera, Women and World Cinema. Today, we have the privilege to hear his presentation, Thelma and Louise at 30, Women Driving Hollywood in the Winding Route of the Classic Road Movie. Please join me in a warm welcome for Dr. Rob McFarland.
All right, this will be really fun trying to get all of this up on the screen and making sure we have everybody on board with the Zoom, because heaven knows I am such a technological whiz boy that that this will all go smoothly, right? Zoomies, how are we doing? Does it look okay? And the winding, everybody's going to have to forgive me my my little driving puns here. The first thing I want to talk about is Thelma and Louise may be the most famous cinematic suicide in cinema history, and so it ends with a suicide. Spoiler alert. It's 30 years. You guys should have caught up. And I want to make sure that everybody feels safe. And if suicide is, we're not going to talk about it very much or go into it very much, but I want to, both in the film tonight as we're screening it, I want you to know that if you are in a place where it's not, where suicide is dangerous for you, I want you to think about this, and I want you to get help and come to us, come to me, come to Professor Hegstrom or your friends and talk about it. And there's lots of great resources. And so this is something that we think about really carefully when we talk about Thelma and Louise and any work of art that includes a suicide. For some people, that is toxic. And I want you to be very careful and don't be afraid of leaving if you need to. I will not take it personally. All right. I also want to make sure that you know that you belong here at BYU. You as a feminist, you as a queer person, as a bi person, this is your home. You live here. Don't let anybody tell you that you do not belong here. You belong here. You belong in global women's studies. You belong on campus. You belong in campus housing and activities. This is your home. Don't let anybody kick you out of your home. You live here. All right. Thank you all for, like I say, technological whiz boy. That is me. All of my editors, Marina and everybody will laugh hearing about that. Okay, I just want to make a quick pitch for this class. If you want great, my whole thing here is a road movie metaphor. So if you want great traveling companions, join us in the Gendered Camera, Women in World Cinema, where we set it up. Since I was an old scoutmaster, we have merit badges. I'm holding up a couple of those. I'm wearing the firing the cannon merit badge for getting rid of the old canonical work. Here's Scopophilia. Here's the No Means No merit badge, the intersectionality. We got the queer cinema merit badge. We got all ecofeminism. So come in, and then we do a Schiegel project at the end of it, which is awesome, and a contest called the Guinewood Derby, which you have to see to believe. So anyway, come join us in the film class if you have a chance. I also want to make another pitch for our Global Women's Studies film series that will be going on this and next semester. We're going to be showing Thelma and Louise tonight. We'll have Wendy and Lucy coming up from Kelly Reichardt, Saudi Women's Driving School, and Nomad Land at the International Cinema. And then those other films will be coming in winter semester. It's going to be really, really fun. All of these road movies, all of us thinking about what it means for women to be mobile and what that means. And it's not as easy as we'll talk about today. It's not as easy as it seems. Let's see. Let me put in presentation mode. Now we're fine. We're fine. Okay. I'm going to start our story with a backseat driver, because backseat drivers are really important. This is Callie Curry, the most important woman in terms of Thelma and Louise that you've never heard of, because this is her story. She wrote it. She wrote it on personal experiences and was fascinated with the idea, and was a woman in Hollywood in the late 80s, and of course got zero traction, and was told there's absolutely no way, no, you can't have it. You're not a screenwriter. But through a series of miracles, her script gets attached with Ridley Scott, the great British director, who takes over, and suddenly it becomes a big thing. And Meryl Streep is she's attached to it for a while. Then we have Susan Sarandon and Geena Davis, and it settles down, and Harvey Keitel, these great artists. But it was her story, and it got taken away from her. And they started to mess with it. And it was very, very interesting because Geena Davis and Susan Sarandon are very interested in Callie Khouri and keeping her attached to the process. Ridley Scott decided that there's going to be a topless scene, because every great movie needs a topless scene, because women, in order to be women on a screen, need to be naked, right? And so he tells this to Geena Davis, and she's not super happy about it, but she smiles and nods and goes straight to Susan Sarandon, who walks in there and says, there will be absolutely zero nude scenes in this film. And thanks to Susan Sarandon's star power, something we're going to get back into, where women's star power becomes something that they can use in Hollywood and leverage in Hollywood to make change. And we have an example of that right here. The iconic ending with them driving in their T-Bird off of the cliff in Moab. They had to use 2 cars and kill 2 cars before they got the right shot. But it was supposed to end completely differently. And there was supposed to be, again, people really got on Ridley Scott's case and said, no, this needs to be Katie Khouri's story. And it was, or Callie Khouri's story. And they pushed it through. And so luckily, through some powerful women, Callie Khouri's story was told. And I want to make sure that you see a picture of her, and that we talk about her as one of the people behind this. She is a filmmaker. Even if she's not the director, it was not possible in the early 90s for her to do this. But she's a filmmaker. And this is her film in a lot of ways, certainly as much or more than Ridley Scott. All right, a roadmap of the film. When would you like me to stop? By the way? Go for it, good. I want to take you through, for those of you, most of us have not seen this. I'm always surprised that in global women's studies, people have not seen Thelma and Louise. That's why we're doing a screening tonight. It's available on Hum Media for use in your classes. It's a really important feminist touchstone and a turn in Hollywood culture. So I'm going to take you on this roadmap, though, a basic idea of what's happening in the film. So the single waitress, Louise, reaches out to her younger friend, Thelma, trying to give her a break from a really, truly oppressive marriage. She is married to a terrible, terrible husband who berates her, doesn't appreciate her, and keeps her trapped at home. They're going on a fishing trip. Who knows what that actually was going to be? They never get to the fishing trip. It's something else happens. Thelma becomes the target of an attempted rape. And Louise, who is a rape survivor herself, ends up shooting the rapist. And in defending, it's not actually in the act of defending Thelma and saving Thelma, but it is as the man is messing with her mentally. And she, as a rape survivor, it's so traumatic, she ends up shooting the guy. And so she saves the day. And the acting in the scene is so amazing because they don't talk about this too much, about her rape experience, but she's a completely different person through this entire scene. Her eyes are huge. You have not seen Susan Sarandon like this in a film before or since. Susan Sarandon brought something to this portrayal of inward trauma that is really amazing. Then the road trip starts, right? And we're going to talk about how women's road trips and women's road trip movies are different from men's road trip movies. This is supposed to be a little road trip on a fishing trip. Louise distrusts the police. She says, we can't go to the police because of what happened to her in Texas. She was raped there, and we don't get a good picture ever of exactly what went on there. But she was not believed, and it was a terrible experience. And so she says, we can't go. We cannot. It will not turn out well for us women. We are not safe with the police. And of course, they as they go along and get into adventure after misadventure, there's an escalation of male violence, police violence against them. For 2 women who hold up a store, and you'll see that hold up in a minute, and it's awesome. They have enough as if they were international terrorists, as if they were going after Osama bin Laden, because women who have stepped out and have taken over the phallic car, and if you don't, people who say, "Oh, come on, you're going too far with the car and the phallus," 2 words: truck nuts. If you don't know what they are, Google it. So there's an escalation of male violence. There's one really great police officer who's trying to keep things settled, but the FBI and the local police just take over into this huge show of force, and they are going to take these women down for stepping out and doing what they should not have done, which is to protect themselves from a rapist. So, but they're now, women on the run, that's unacceptable. Guns, firepower, they take it over and they come after them. Now, there's some really interesting, I put transformations, not to talk about transsexuality, but the idea of trans being how we move from place, like transportation, and things that go from one place to another. And so these are transformations that happen as a part of mobility and movement. This is something we see that's so important with study abroad and with other programs, that we see that when people become mobile and travel, things happen to them. They change. Often we have kids come home from study abroad and break up with their boyfriends or girlfriends because they're a new person. Something has happened because they've been moving, and this movement causes change. So the way when we start out, we're in these really tight cinematic spaces where there's a close-up, really crowded cameras. You see, we have Louise here who's on the phone with Thelma. This is a crosscut between the two of them as they're discussing their upcoming fishing trip and the fact that Thelma can't get permission from her husband to go. But you notice they are uber feminissima, right? We've got the floral print in her kitchen, and in the pots and everything has flowers on them. And we've got these old-fashioned maid uniforms, kind of fetishistic maid uniforms on these waitresses at this truck stop where Louise works. So this is where they're caught at the beginning of the film, is in this world. The first huge transformation happens as they're going on their fishing trip and leaving. And this is when they take the famous Polaroid picture of themselves that comes up on the movie poster. And it is pure classic Hollywood, right? It is Isadora Duncan. It is glamour. Louise drives this fantastic T-Bird, and they're driving out and enjoying themselves, but they are movie stars at this point. There's a kind of a meta filmic moment. Every time you see people taking pictures and the pictures show up in the film, take note, because this is saying, let's look at the media. And media is really, really important. And the idea of how these media images of these women change what's going to happen and how it's going to change the world. That Polaroid is going to be the last thing that flies out of their car as they're driving off the cliff in Moab at the end. Another transformation we see here that's really, really important. They're transcending, right? They're rising above. Ascending is, a movement. They're transcending several things that could have stopped. The film could have stopped at their victimhood. These are crazy women. They're called over and over again. They're insane. They're off their rockers. What are they thinking? They're objects of desire. Lots of people want to see them, want to look at them and get a good look at them. They're also objects, especially from Harvey Keitel, of concern and pity. And they transcend all of these things, which is a really important transformation. All of this. This is where they should be and should land, and they don't. It goes beyond that. So they transcend it. They overcome a stereotype. A really important part of this is that they take over the camera and the way a camera is supposed to look. Laura Mulvey in the 70s writes a very important article called, bringing about the male gaze, and what she calls scopophilia, which is this merit badge that we earned in my class right here. Scopophilia, meaning the passion, getting turned on by images, right? And she says the camera of film, of classic Hollywood, in fact, in world cinema, the camera takes the part of male eyes. And women are looked at by the camera like male eyes look at a woman. And this is a problem because women also have the subjective view. And what about films that would look at the world as if a woman were looking at the world? And one of the things that is really done, to Ridley Scott's credit, he works really hard on understanding what the female gaze might look at and turns it around. You can't really see it here, but here we have Brad Pitt in his breakout role. If nothing else, this movie gave us Brad Pitt as a thing. Thank you. So subverting the male, and here we have Thelma, Geena Davis totally checking him out. And it's as if this is not enough of a shot. The cross cut that comes from this one is a picture of him in the rear view mirror and his bum moving across the rear view mirror, right? So women are looking at men, and we're going to come back to this. This is one of the criticisms of the film where people say, why take the bad things of male cinema and just put it onto female cinema? What are we reaching through that? That's nothing. To which I say, cupcake, cowboy up cupcake. We've spent most of cinema being in the driver's seat. It's time for us to get out and let somebody else look at us. And this is subversive. This causes a brouhaha among the culture war that was going on at the time. It explodes around this. So let's think about that. Her empowerment as a looker and a person of desire. All right. The other important thing to notice as we're watching the film tonight, or whenever you get around to watching it, is the Western mythology and why this has to do with the West, because it starts out as two crazy women who are, and a beaten wife and a beaten down waitress in Arkansas. That has nothing to do with the Western, but as they go out to the West, and this is a typical thing for road movies, the Western landscape of the United States plays an inordinate role, even in foreign road movies, that they have homages that somehow feel like the American desert. Because the American desert has become kind of the location of these road movies. Now, before anything in this movie happens, before we go to these tight little shots in their kitchens where they're stuck in their floral prints, the first thing that happens in the movie is this shot of, this is actually in Colorado, and an empty road. The shot never shows up again in the film, but what we have here, and it goes from black and white to color, which I read as a classic homage to the Westerns, to American Westerns. And they're showing this mythical Western cinematic universe, which has existed, we imagine, in these old John Wayne films. And it's bringing up to our modern times, but it's still empty. They're not there yet. Nobody's on that road. But there is a Western story waiting to be told. And this gets us ready to understand the Western that is about to come and be totally reappropriated. This is not the Western that our grandpa did. This is going to drive me crazy, so I'm going to close iTunes right here. It won't let me close iTunes. All right, whatever. So the transformative power of the Western landscape is fascinating in this film. There's a scene at night when they're driving down the Colorado Canyon in Moab, and they've lit up the rock formations, and the two of them going through. And this is where they realize things aren't going to go like they thought they were going to go. This isn't just an escape trip, but this is something bigger. And they realize this, and they are starting to worry, but they're inspired by the things, and they become new women as they look at the landscape around them and are emboldened and say, we're free. This is beautiful. We can see this is beautiful. We can move through it, and we move through it at our pace and do what we want. And that is what the power of the Western landscape, the transformative power of the Western landscape in here. As a part of this Western mythology, as they take off, they lose their Hollywood glamour woman outfits. They throw things away. And over again, they pick up a scarf or a t-shirt. Here she buys this hat from this old man. And they slowly take on the costumes of a classic Western in really, really interesting ways. They are transforming themselves from the women that they were into the women they feel like inside now. And this is really a transition. The idea that we are a different person, maybe inside as our identity as to what we present. And so it's not necessarily an appropriation and dressing up as something they're not. As we see it, and you'll see this in the film over and over again, they change and they need to dress appropriately for the changes that are going on inside of them. This is why it's often coded as a queer movie. Western mythology plays a really, really important part in all of this. I'd like to show a couple of clips and some moments here that are really, really problematic. Let's go back here for a second. All right, let's just go to all right, we want to think about for a minute what makes women mobile and immobile, because there's a really important part here as they're leaving. Brad Pitt wants to go with them, and Louise says, absolutely not. We're not taking the man with us. And as they're chasing it down, I want us to watch this scene and to think about what it means for women. I really hope we get good sound and all sorts of things from here.
Looks like we could get on this road 81 here and head down towards Dallas.
No, I don't want to go through Texas. Find some way we don't have to go through there.
Wait. What? You want to go to Mexico from Oklahoma, but you don't want to go through Texas?
Thelma, you know how I feel about Texas. We're not going that way.
Yeah, I know.
know, Louise, but we're running for our lives. I mean, can't you make an exception? I mean, look at this map. The only thing between Oklahoma and Mexico is Texas. Look.
Thelma, I'm not going to talk about this. Now, you either find another way or give me the goddamn map and I will. You understand?
No, Louise, I don't. Now, how come you never told me what happened to you there?
Look, you shoot up a guy's head with his pants down. Believe me, Texas is not the place you want to get caught.
You shoot off a guy's head with his pants down. Texas is not the place you want to get caught. Right. So she's survived this rape. And we got this train going by. They've stopped for the train. They're impeded in their progress. And she is saying, we're going from Oklahoma to Mexico, but we're not going to go through Texas because Texas is a thing. Right. Why are women put into motion and women kept out of motion? What makes them mobile and immobile? Often it is pregnancy and we also, racism, poverty, lots of different things, but often it has to do with sexual violence, which is a really important thing. Could you hear the audio, even though it wasn't coming over the speakers? Okay. This is a really, really important moment. So they're having to not only escape to Mexico, they're having to do it in a roundabout way because Texas is the locus of this trauma that cannot be had. And this is why she's also explaining why she shot the other person, why she shot the man as Thelma was trying to get raped, because this is what, and she understands that we are not going to, boys will be boys. And she tells him after she saves him from the rapist, after she saves Thelma, you were seen dancing with this man all night. People are going to say, oh, you just let it happen. And then, you gave him the wrong signals. It's your fault that you're getting raped. And so this is a really, really important thing, that the trauma can be the largest state in the contiguous United States and be represented by a border. And the trauma can keep people from moving, can also set people into movement. So we have women here escaping because of a rape and unable to actually complete that escape because of a rape. And it's a really, really interesting place to be. And this is not your typical male road movie problem. Okay. Now, in terms of the Western things that are going on here, I want to show you a little scene with Brad Pitt. Yesterday let's talk about scopophilia. Yesterday in my class, we were talking about something and there was a scene with a guy with his shirt off and a woman commented and said, that director understood the assignment. The assignment was to give us some men to look at. So this is me understanding the assignment for Global Women's Studies. We're going to get some young Brad Pitt here. What I want you to notice, though, is he is acting the outlaw, and he's a big swagger. Who knows if anything he's saying is true, but he is going to talk about how to rob a bank. And she is going to listen very, very carefully and then give a parody of this performance in a minute. But let's watch for a minute for your enjoyment. We're going to watch Brad Pitt giving this idea of how you act.
No, up here, that shit cannot be taught. And then, oh shit, I want to talk about this. Like this. All right. Then I'd waltz right in. Yep. Then I just kind of waltz on in, and I'd say, ladies, gentlemen, let's see who wins the prize for keeping their cool. Simon says, everybody down on the floor. Now, nobody loses their head, then nobody loses their head. You, sir. Yeah, you do the honors. Take that cash, you put it in that bag right there. You got an amazing story to tell your friends. If not, well, you got a tag on your toe. You decide. Simple as that.
Is there a way to get the sound through the...
And, get the hell out of Dodge, yeah.
All right, so that is our friend Brad Pitt explaining how a robbery goes. And he's the ultimate Western outlaw with his hat. And of course, he has to place the hat on and be the Western outlaw. It's not just him talking about the logistics of this is performance, right? This is a very, very wild performance. It probably has to do with the sound output there, but it usually comes through the HDMI, right?
It should.
This is one of the great things about teaching film is we have to get 25 things in line to be able to show a film, and it's a technological nightmare always, which is why I'm exactly the right person for it. Always. Anyway, so what we're about to see here is Louise. and not Louise, Thelma, after doing this. And she's the innocent one. She's the one who doesn't know the ways of the world, and that Louise is having to protect Thelma. But Thelma has now learned this from the man who, and he ends up taking all of their money and leaving them with no money to get forward on. And they're at the end of their rope. They're going to get caught. They're out of gas. And so they have nowhere else to turn. But here we're going to see what happens when.
My goodness.
That's great.
Gentlemanly about it. Well, now, I've always believed if done properly, armed robbery doesn't have to be a totally unpleasant experience. What?
You're a real live outlaw, aren't you?
Well, I may be an outlaw, darling, but you're the one stealing my heart.
Yes, and this is what we're supposed to get out of this, right? This is exactly the kind of person we're talking about here. Now, fun thing happens. She robs the store, but where we're going to see it is through the eyes of the police who are camped out at her home with her no good husband, and they're going to watch her performance. This is Thelma doing Brad Pitt, her best Brad Pitt. As she goes in, she makes the robbery, and this is when they really change. So let's go back here. They're in the police station this time, and they're going to watch. So let's just a second. I want to give you some of the glory as they're walking away, as they're driving away. Just a little bit of glory, right? Okay.
Cool. Sir, would you do the honors? Take all the cash out of that drawer, put it in a paper bag.
Yes, ma'am.
You're going to have an amazing story to tell all your friends. If not, you'll have a tag on your toe. You decide. All right. Hurry up. Let's go. Ma'am, would you be quiet? Sir, sit down, please. Thank you. Just stay there. Just get real comfortable. Hey, some bottles of wild turkey, too, will you?
Yes, ma'am.
Now you get down, too?
Yes, ma'am.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for your cooperation. Now stay down on the floor till I'm gone. Have a good day.
Jesus Christ.
Good God.
Okay. You notice what they say at the end of here. First of all, he picks up a sandwich. This is now cinema, right? This is movies. This is guys' movie night. They are aroused. They are amazed. And this husband, nobody else is like, this is my coward little life that I terrorized. And here she is taking over the world. So think about this meta cinematic moment and how important that is. All right, we got a long way to go and a short time to get there to take it from Smokey and the Bandit, another road movie. So this Western mythology ends, of course, with as they drive off the cliff at the end of the movie. And rather than give in to the huge male police force that's behind them, all aiming at them. But we fade out on this. They stop it right here. They never fall. They only ascend. In other words, they're entering the realm of mythology, of legend. They are now Western legends, women who have succeeded in escaping. The same ending as Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, by the way. Okay. I guess we're just going to do this way. All right, the reception of Thelma and Louise, the skid marks it leaves behind. They talk about feminism. Is it the first major queer film? This is from 1991, the Time magazine, Why Thelma and Louise Strikes a Nerve. A huge backlash against it. The stay in your lane idea, especially about the men. How can men possibly be shown as such bimbos and so superficially and only as the objects of desire? To which women said, oh, what must that be like? To have your gender shown and not taken seriously in a film. Oh no, not that. right? So what this leads to, the scholarly reception, there's huge scholarship surrounding Thelma and Louise. If you do a search on JSTOR, you'll find it. And you'll notice that these aren't about Thelma and Louise. They're using Thelma and Louise as theory to approach other works. It shows you how important it is in feminist scholarship. Now, this is where I want to talk about what the real difference is here, and where it really makes a lasting difference is not only in the film and whatever. Geena Davis herself, so impressed by what happened and so depressed about what happened to Callie Curry, starts the Geena Davis Institute on Gender and Media, which started tracking and giving all sorts of great data about kids shows, about all sorts of shows and what happens with them and how many times minorities and women are represented, et cetera, et cetera. This breeds and brings about the Annenberg Inclusion Initiative, another scholarly work which talks about how many women are actually directing in Hollywood. And they start forming lawsuits and they start demanding things. They start to where it starts to make a difference. And they get into they make some real change. And this is women driving Hollywood. And it happens because Geena Davis was launched by Thelma and Louise. It's a road movie. Now, this is not the only road movie that has made a difference. Reese Witherspoon, after all of her success in Legally Blonde and whatever, she founds Hello Sunshine Productions. And their first big production is Wild, based on Cheryl Strayed's book about hiking. And it is such a success that it paves the way for her subsequent successes: Gone Girl, Hot Pursuit, Big Little Lies, etc. Really important is that it's not just the white chicks that are using road movies to launch their careers. Oprah, who herself reboots her career with the so-called Oprah Road Trip with Gayle King in 2006, an homage to Thelma and Louise. She founds Harpo Productions, Oprah Winfrey Network, and on Oprah Winfrey Network, Queen Sugar, she brings Ava DuVernay on a road trip with her to Maui, and they talk about how to make Queen Sugar. And it becomes a talent incubator for women of color. Ava DuVernay turns around and returns the favor, has different women like Cheryl Dunye create content for and direct Queen Sugar and launch their careers. Shonda Rhimes starts with Crossroads, a road movie, and of course, by now has Shondaland, her production company, and the Women's Mentoring Directorship Program. Melina Matsoukas is doing the same thing with Queen and Slim. Her directing career takes off, and also this is Lena Waithe's first writing credit and first big movie. The classic male road movie, and I've made a long line of them here, from Dennis Hopper's Easy Riders and Kill Bill and all these. What we find in these is the archetypal hero's journey. There's a token, an old mentor, an evil force, and redemption, or a midlife crisis. They go on self-discovery, fulfillment, and closure, like in Sideways or City Slickers. There's friendships, getting the band back together, like the Blues Brothers or Magic Mike XXL. There's an excessive chivalrous errand, like in Dumb and Dumber, to return somebody or something. Revenge, violence, retribution, just being sick and twisted, like any Tarantino road movie. Or an outlaw fantasy, excess and exploitation, lots of naked women, like an Easy Rider or Faster Pussycat Kill Kill. You gotta love that one, by Russ Meyer, 1965. Now let's think about women and movies and road trips. Instead of a voyage of discovery or decadence or rebellion, why does a woman take to the road? Often because of sexual violence, pregnancy, racism, poverty, immobility. We think of biology and violence and cultural expectations as what keeps women at home as the angel of the house and in her place. But the other reality is that these things displace women. In order to survive, they have to move. These are the impetus for setting out on a journey. And if we look at the history of women-produced road movies, from the very beginning, the first one is Ida Lupino's Outrage, which is a rape survivor who takes a road trip to California and to escape the place because she cannot get away from the trauma that was her rape. And that is in 1949 that's done. And as we go through, I make a list of these exact things. That leads us to something I want to say. The last strangest turn in women's road movies is happening right now. The new abortion road trip movie, trend seeks to normalize abortion. You can see them all talking about the abortion road movie. There are tons of them online. And I would just like to show you a tad of one.
Fine, you're fine. You always use a condom, so you're fine.
Hey, dude.
I've got this thing
If a young woman needs a procedure, is that possible? Where's the closest facility? There's an Albuquerque in Missouri? The law won't let me get one without my parents knowing. I know we're not close anymore. True. And I'm the last person that you want to help. Accurate. But I need your help, and I don't have anywhere else to go.
Go where?
To get the thing, the procedure.
So you're hiding this from your man, your best friend.
Hey, girl.
And your Jesus freak parents. And you thought, why not ask Bailey Butler to drive me hundreds of miles? Because she probably doesn't have anything to do anyway.
Kind of, yes. Bailey! Bailey, come on!
I'm just messing with you. You're right, I do not have anything going on.
I thought you drove a Camry.
Right? And of course, we have a different relationship to abortion, but I want to tell you, my friend who lives in Texas has 3 boys, was finally getting a girl. There was something wrong with pregnancy that threatened her health. Her bishop, and with the help of her stake president, there was no problem there. She went and got an abortion. She got the health care she needed. Today, as we were talking to her about it, she can't do that. That will not be possible to do in Texas anymore. The LDS Church's stance and policy on abortion cannot happen in Texas. They have now gone and they are going against what we believe about abortion the other way. So this is a really important moment, of course, in there are lots of these. I suggest Grandma, Little Woods. The best of these films is Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. We decided not to keep it on our road trip thing for political reasons, but Plan B and Unpregnant. But the real point is that Thelma and Louise is relevant in 2021. Unfortunately, I put up my shirt of Howdy Arabia and Al Qaeda. The idea that because of laws, people need to move and cannot get the health care that they need. One last thing I want to point out, and I'm totally over time. There's the biggest, most complete retrospective of women's movies and women in Hollywood just came out, and it's called Women Make Film, a Road Movie Through Cinema. And so in order to talk about women's cinema in general, they use road movies as the metaphor. So road movies are very important to women's cinema, and Thelma and Louise is the grandmama of them all in a lot of ways, and really changed the world. Thank you. Sorry for going over with all this.
Okay. Thank you so much for such a wonderful lecture. As one of my favorite films of all time, I'm really excited to respond to this Thelma and Louise lecture, The Feminist Reclamation of the West, and a perfect example of why we need women in film. Film is one of the most important mediums that we have as a human society. It reflects history, it reflects culture and values. And Thelma and Louise has been such a valuable part of American film history and America's feminist film history, bringing so many women's issues light to popular culture, with powerful women like Geena Davis, Susan Sarandon, and Callie Curry giving issues like spousal abuse, rape, and female independence a strong voice. Dr. McFarland explained so many elements of film, such as cinematography, mise-en-scène, and post-production, to describe how form makes meaning. Each element of film adds to the overall theme, the overall message. When women are at the helm, they can add subtleties or even blatant elements to do things like subvert the male gaze, discuss trauma from a woman's perspective, represent female mobility, such as in this movie, and so many other things. This is why it matters who's creating film. We're tired of the film industry being dominated by men. We're tired of it being dominated by the male gaze, and we're tired of blatant objectification, and this is why we need women in film. Just like the women in history who have paved the way for voting rights, reproductive rights, workplace rights, and all things pertaining to the feminist movement, it's so important that we admire and learn about the women who pioneered Hollywood, such as these women discussed in Thelma and Louise. So how does a movie connect to women's studies as a whole? Film is a medium for women's stories. When women's stories are shared with women at the helm of the storytelling, change can occur, culture can be affected. We've seen it happen. It's currently happening. It needs to continue to happen. We need women in film. We need to watch women in film, and we need to promote it with everything we have. Okay, thank you everybody for attending today. As our lecture today has ran a little bit long, we'd love to have you stay for the Q&A session, but if you have class, we understand that you may need to leave. But please stay around if you can. Anybody who would like to ask any questions, please line up along this wall, along the map, but please be socially distanced. We will be alternating questions from in person and then one off of Zoom. So everyone on Zoom as well, feel free to enter any of your questions that you have. And I'll start with one of my questions to start off our Q&A here for a few minutes. And we see in Thelma and Louise, and you talked a lot, Professor McFarland, about the relationship of clothes, that fashion has a lot of symbolism in this film on their journey and where they are personally. At the same time, you mentioned that they were very strong against any nudity. So there's a very complex relationship, I think, that Thelma and Louise shows between women and clothing or lack of clothing. So how has that relationship of women and clothing changed in film history and women's films, and what role did Thelma and Louise specifically play in the relationship of women and clothes?
One of the slides I did not show was as they come and there's a lewd truck driver who's making all these horrible signs at them and whatever, and they pull over and he's making lewd signs. Says, who are you to act like that? And by then they've transformed from the little feminissima submissive women to these avenging angels. And they shoot his truck and blow it up. It's a gasoline truck. And he said, you blankety blanks from hell, and that's what they are. They're like, we are the women from hell now. We're these avenging angels. And so they become, here, clothing is a form of empowerment. I do not want to say that taking your clothes off cannot also be a form of empowerment, but this is something that a woman has to decide for herself. And there's lots of different ways of showing empowerment. And I don't get that always because, the history of objectification of that is so strong. But there are women, Beyonce, if we think about her videos and Lemonade and different things, the way that women control what happens to their bodies can take lots of different ways and with clothes.
Sorry. But we have a chat question from Bailey Johnson. She asks, so much of strong women in film seems to be of female archetypes who have taken on more conventionally masculine traits, becoming robbers, aggressive, violent, and more ruthless. Is there a way to combat this so that softer female character archetypes can be written and still make a commentary on women's experiences?
It's a fascinating question. If you think about, on the one hand, we have Promising Young Woman of Carey Mulligan, right? And this kind of shoot 'em up. But on the other hand, we have anybody see Nomadland? This is our final film. If you want to see the story of a soft-spoken woman who is doing what she can and making the world fit to what she needs, watch Nomadland. It is the most beautiful film and a lesson in empathy. And what I say is, whether you are Catherine Bigelow, who's doing Point Break and The Hurt Locker and war movies, right? And the Osama bin Laden Zero Dark 30, she's making war movies, but she's a woman. She can make war movies if she wants, right? She can make male movies if she wants, right? Women can make whatever movie they want, but we need to make space, of course, for these quiet cinematic moments. Chloe Zhao is a brilliant master at this, including not famous non-actor women that she in non-actors that she incorporates into it. So I really strongly suggest when Nomadland comes up at International Cinema, watch it. It's beautiful.
Mike, sorry. Another question from the chat. This is from Riley Ewer. What is your opinion about the objectification of men in women's movies? Do you think it represents progress or just equal treatment?
This is and this was the pushback that Thelma and Louise got. Like, you're just doing what men do. And yes, it's not necessarily progress because nobody should be objectified. But on the other hand, the power differential here. So it's the same question as reverse racism, right? Well, if somebody has a problem with white people, it's just racism. It's not. It could be racism. It could be located there, but the power differential is so different. No man needs to go out in the middle of the night and say, am I going to be safe walking to my car? Very rarely, right? And as long as that is the reality, there's a power differential. And so if women are turning the male gaze onto them and making the female gaze on and objectifying them to make a point, I think it is really important that they be able to do so. And I think it makes a point because it's not equal. All things are not equal.
Another question from Joshua. Was the pushback from this movie mostly men at the time, or was there also significant pushback from women?
There was pushback from everyone. And the culturally conservative women were pushing back as well, and saying, this is not what we want from womanhood. This is not how we want womanhood portrayed. That, this isn't women. And it isn't all women, and nor is it a great idea. We don't want things to end in suicide, but that's why we have film, right? As an empathy machine, as something that can put us into their boots, and we have to walk a mile, drive 100 miles in their boots, right? And understand what is going on in their heads and what women have to push back against. And so it's true that there was, it's like now, Trump for women or women for Trump, right? It's the same kind of thing where women have lots of political possibilities and choices, but this is providing an opportunity to discuss what are those choices, and are those good choices, and we're always surprised, and we shouldn't be surprised. There are women who that conservative take on the world really speaks to them, and it should. But we need to understand that it's easy to think, oh, all women are going to get behind this, and it's not. And it's really important as feminists that we make space for conservative feminism and for pro-life, and that they can march with us side by side, and that we love them, and that we include them in it, and we let them define feminism and work for them as it's going to. It's really important that we are a big tent feminism.
Another question from the chat from Jennifer Polito. Question: how are scholars using this film in their academic research as related to feminism in cinema?
This is the idea of what they take this film as the example of reappropriating a genre and rethinking it and tearing it and apart from inside out, and taking what's there and kind of hollowing it out and reappropriating it. And so it kind of stands as shorthand for that whole process. And so when somebody says, here's a film who does what Thelma and Louise did, right? And it's also a film that has the potential to make a big change culturally, like Thelma and Louise did. Does that answer your question? Okay.
All the questions that we have from the chat.
Anybody else from the room? You can just shout from where you are. Or... They do. There's a kiss. They kiss before they go over. It's a friendly. I mean, it's not necessarily a queer kiss, but it is something that says these are women who grow into a new identity and change their life according to their new identity, and come what may, and make their space, even though it makes everyone really, really angry. And so Ruby B. Rich calls it the first great smash hit of queer cinema, even though it's not. There's lots of queer films that are going along, but this is the same year that I Want to Be a Cheerleader is coming out, right? And it's still like lesbian films are porn films, right? The thing, and for the male pleasure, and they're often little art house films that hasn't become Portrait of a Woman on Fire is still decades off, right? And so that's why they're looking for clues in other films that might take them. And this is the first big blockbuster that they're saying they're dealing with this is our problem. They're women and doing it, and they're straight women, but their problems and the way that they deal with them are problems that we resonate with very, very strongly. After seeing this, one of my queer students said, I can now consider Thelma and Louise are my queer moms. I have a straight mom, but these are my queer moms. So anyway, thank you very much for your, and we invite you to come to the screening tonight at the GFSD Courtyard. It's kind of like a drive-in movie. It'll be fun. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you everybody for coming to today's class, and thank you, Professor McFarland, for giving us a little bit of your time today to talk about this subject. And a little reminder, submit your 4 questions today before you leave to Learning Suite, and tomorrow the first draft of the essay. Let's give one more round of applause for Professor McFarland.